Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. India's Prime Minister is in the UAE, his last big bang foreign visit before the general election. He is addressing the diaspora in an event called Elan Modi. He's held talks with the top Emirati leadership, and tomorrow he'll inaugurate the biggest Hindu temple in West Asia. It's a visit laden with symbolism and substance. We'll get to the highlights. Back in India, the farmers are protesting again. They have a long list of demands, including asking India to exit the World Trade Organization and scrap all trade deals. To be fair, it's a tall ask. We'll break down the issues and the politics for you. In Pakistan, Bilawal Bhutto says he doesn't want to be part of the government. Where does that leave Nawaz Sharif? We'll tell you. In the US, Kamala Harris says if Biden steps down, she's ready to lead. But is America ready for her to lead? In Indonesia, we focus on Prabowo Subianto, the man tipped to win tomorrow's election. Why is he controversial and what makes him the frontrunner? In Europe, leaders are telling people to prepare for war thanks to Donald Trump. In Africa's Malawi, they'll allow visa-free travel from 79 countries. Also discussing what is AI sovereignty, how big is the global pet food industry, and why do women around the world still pay the motherhood penalty? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Armenia says at least 4 soldiers killed in a border clash with Azerbaijan. Russia urges restraint. This incident comes just days after the re-election of Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev. Yerevan and Baku have fought 2 wars over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Last September, Azerbaijan recaptured it in an offensive. Russia declares Estonian Prime Minister as wanted for destroying Soviet-era war memorials after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania demolished some of those monuments, leading to outrage in Moscow. Israel spy chief travels to Cairo for Gaza truce talks. He will meet his Egyptian and American counterparts. Qatari Prime Minister, who brokered the previous ceasefire, will also be present. There is increasing global pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire with Hamas. Jailed former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra to be freed. He could be released as soon as this weekend. Last year, Thaksin was jailed after he returned to Thailand in August. He was sentenced to 8 years for graft. The Thai king reduced the sentence to 1 year. Senegal suspends mobile internet services for the second time this month, also bans a protest march over delay in the presidential poll. Recently, President Macky Sall postponed the election to December, and since the announcement, there have been violent protests in the West African nation. And Bitcoin breaks the $50,000 mark for the first time since 2021. In recent months, the cryptocurrency has enjoyed a strong run as investors expect broader trading approval. But the currency remains well below its record value of almost $69,000 in 2020. Prime Minister Modi is in the UAE. It's familiar turf for him. He first visited the country in 2015. He was just finding his feet on the global stage, which is not the case anymore. He's now a seasoned world leader. This is the Prime Minister's 7th trip to the UAE, possibly his last one before the general election. So what's lined up? Let's start with the arrival. Prime Minister Modi was welcomed in Abu Dhabi by the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, also known as MBZ. Both men exchanged a warm hug and pleasantries. Then Prime Minister Modi inspected a guard of honor. Take a look. So pomp done, time for business. Modi and MBZ launched the UAE's new domestic card system. It's called the J1. The card itself is based on India's RuPay cards. Think of it as India's Visa or MasterCard. Prime Minister Modi gifted MBZ a card with his name on it. The Emirati leader used it to make a transaction on camera. It's a sign of the financial synergy between the two sides. India's UPI payment system is already working in the UAE. It's a big help for the diaspora. Around 3.5 million Indians live and work in the UAE. They regularly send money back home, so the UPI and RuPay cards will help them. After launching this service, Modi and MBZ sat down for talks. The Prime Minister made some opening remarks. He said coming to the UAE feels like coming home. Listen in.
मुझे हमेशा लगा है कि जब मैं आपके पास आया हूं, आप लोगों के बीच आया हूं, तब हमेशा लगा है कि जैसे मैं अपने ही घर में आया हूं, अपने ही परिवार के ही सदस्यों के साथ मैं मिलने आया हूं, ऐसा मैं हमेशा अनुभव कर रहा हूं। और आज भारत और यूएई के बीच में हर क्षेत्र में एक साझी भागीदारी हो रही है। आज भी हम कई महत्वपूर्ण फैसले करने जा रहे हैं।
Around 8 agreements have been signed. These are the most important ones. Number one, a bilateral treaty on investments. The UAE is the 4th largest investor in India. It is lining up projects worth $50 billion. Chances are this treaty will help. Number two, a deal on digital infrastructure projects. Both countries are betting on the tech boom. They're focusing on semiconductors and artificial intelligence. This deal will help combine forces. Whether it's investment, funds or know-how, they'll work together. Number three, a new agreement on the India-Middle East Economic Corridor. You may remember it. This project was unveiled last year at the G20. The plan is to link Europe to India. And Israel too is part of that plan. But the war in Israel has raised questions on its future. Would the corridor ever take off? That's the doubt now. So Prime Minister Modi and MBZ have reaffirmed their faith in it. Number four, financial deals. India's UPI has been linked to the UAE's ANI systems. The RuPay has been linked to the UAE's J1 card. So the talks delivered. Some very important deals were signed. Later, the Prime Minister headed for his diaspora event. It's called Elan Modi. It's a bit like Howdy Modi in the US. Elan means hello. More than 65,000 people registered for this event. They packed into the Zayed Sports City Stadium. Take a look.
And the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi.
It's been a feature of Prime Minister Modi's foreign trips, these diaspora events. They're attended by tens of thousands of people. But what's the idea behind it? Well, for the diaspora, it's a way to connect, to feel close to their homeland. And for the Prime Minister, it's a diplomatic tool. These events showcase the power and influence of the Indian community in various countries. They also offer the Prime Minister a popularity boost. Who doesn't like this? So that was today's events in the UAE. Tomorrow will be even bigger. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate a Hindu temple near Abu Dhabi, the biggest one in the Gulf. Also a sign of the close relationship. Today, the Prime Minister narrated how the temple plan was approved. Listen to this.
बीएपीएस का मंदिर बनना आपके सहयोग के बिना ये संभव ही नहीं था और मेरी पहली मुलाकात थी। मैंने सिंपली आपको रिक्वेस्ट की कि जरा आप देख लीजिए और पलक झपकते ही आपने उसका निर्णय करके मुझे बता दिया कि आप बस जगह पर ऐसे उंगली रख दीजिए, आपको जगह मिल जाएगी। शायद इतना विश्वास, इतना प्यार अपने आप में एक बहुत ही अनोखे संबंधों की ये शक्ति को दर्शाता है।
Clearly, the personal ties have helped. Modi called MBZ his brother. And both leaders have always found time for each other. Last month, MBZ traveled to India. He held a road show with Prime Minister Modi in the state of Gujarat. It was a big deal for him because MBZ is not the speech or rally kind of leader. In that sense, he's very different from Prime Minister Modi. But the two leaders have made it work. Today, their friendship has taken this relationship to new heights. Back in India, things are tense. A major farmers' protest has broken out. We've seen reports of violent standoffs. Farmers are breaking barricades. Cops are firing tear gas. It's like a throwback to the scenes of 2020 and 2021. So what's the issue this time? The protest is called Dilli Chalo, meaning March to Delhi. It's been a popular political slogan across Indian history. Now the farmers are using it. And who is leading them? Mainly two groups, the Kisan Mazdoor Morcha, which claims to represent 100 farmers' unions, and the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, which claims to represent 150 unions. So put together, 250 farmers' unions are said to be involved. And what do they want? Their list has 12 demands, but we'll focus on the top ones. Number one, a law to guarantee MSP for all crops. MSP is the minimum support price. It's like a price floor on crops. You cannot sell a crop below this price. That's MSP. Number two, a full debt waiver for farmers. Number three, pension for all farmers. Number four, more compensation. They want 4 times the minimum price when their land is acquired. And number five, India should exit the World Trade Organization, also scrap all free trade deals. Now, these are big demands. And the MSP is the biggest of them all. Let me explain what this means. Right now, the government announces a minimum price for 23 crops. 23 crops that are to be bought at a minimum price. That's the practice. But not all of them are. In fact, only 2 crops get the MSP. That's rice and wheat. The government buys rice and wheat at a minimum price from farmers. And the idea behind this is quite simple. Farmers should have a safety net. They cannot be left to the market's mercy. Hence the minimum support price. But this practice is not enshrined in law. It's like an executive action. And that's what the farmers want to change. They want MSP for all crops, not just wheat and rice. And they want it legalized. So the MSP will then apply to everyone, both private and government buyers. That's what they want. If the private ones won't buy, then the government will have to buy. If not, it will be a legal violation. That is the demand of the farmers. Until yesterday, talks were on. Farmers were speaking to Union Minister Piyush Goyal. But today, the march began. Most of the action is at the Shambhu border. It's located between Punjab and Haryana. Now, Haryana has sealed its borders. So have Rajasthan and the National Capital Region. Dozens of barricades have been set up. Container walls have been erected. The idea is to stop these farmers from reaching Delhi. Of course, the farmers pushed back. And what followed was a violent standoff. Police officers used drones to fire tear gas. Take a look. It seems to be the trend. Farmers are protesting in Europe as well. There, the reasons are different. European farmers want more subsidies, especially on fuel. In India, this is the second major unrest in 4 years. The last one was in 2020 and 2021. Again, different reasons. India had introduced 3 farm laws to reform the market, but the farmers rejected those laws. They protested for almost 13 months near the Delhi border. Eventually, the government gave in. The laws were taken back. This time, it's about the legal MSP. Once again, the tractors and trucks are out and they're heading full speed to the national capital. And the timing is key. India's general elections are slated for the month of May. And farmers are a key vote bank. They also have the power to influence other voters. It's an emotional connect. Farmers are seen as feeding 1.4 billion Indians, so opposing them is deeply unpopular. Which brings us to the big question, will the Indian government cave again? Let's look at what experts say. Many of them do not like the legal MSP. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, how will you impose it? A lot of crop sale happens outside regulated markets, so you can't track every sale. Number two, opposition from private players. They like to buy when prices are low, but a legal MSP would end that. Consider what happened in Maharashtra. It tried a legal MSP in 2018. Private players who violated it were fined up to 50,000 rupees. So you know what these traders did? They started boycotting the markets. And reason number three, lack of infrastructure. A legal MSP will require the government to take the lead, but where will these crops be stored? Government warehouses are already packed. They don't have the infra. Reason number four, a big hole in the government's pocket. Legal MSP will reportedly cost 10 lakh crore rupees, which is why experts are wary. So what happens next? Hopefully more talks. Endless rallies and protests help no one. It's important for both sides to sit down and talk, to find a middle ground. At the same time, some red lines have to be drawn. You cannot keep holding the government hostage. Demands must be rooted in logic. If not, you set the wrong precedent. Let's hope good sense prevails this time. Now let's turn to Pakistan, a country barreling towards chaos. After 4 days of back and forth, there is a new twist in Pakistan's Game of Thrones. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari will not join the government. Bhutto says he won't become Prime Minister. Not like he...
The Pakistan People's Party does not have a mandate to form government, to form the federal government, or iski wajah se, I will not be putting myself forward for the candidacy of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. The Pakistan People's Party has decided that while we are unable or not in a position to join the federal government ourselves, nor would we be interested in taking ministries in such a setup.
So Bilawal Bhutto Zardari saying he will not become Prime Minister. Like we said, not like he had a serious chance, but his party did. They had a chance to control the levers of power. Now Bhutto has decided he'll sit out of government. He will support Nawaz Sharif, but from the outside, and only on a case-by-case basis. So Nawaz Sharif may have the support he needed, but not in the manner that he imagined. Looks like he'll form a minority government. He has a path to power now, but it's not a straight line. And this is how the numbers stack up. Pakistan's parliament, or the National Assembly as they call it, has 336 seats. The halfway mark is 169. Sharif's party has 79 seats. The Bhutto camp has 54 seats. That's 133 seats in total. So even with Bhutto's outside support, Sharif is falling short of the majority mark. He needs another 36 lawmakers on his side. That is the math. Where will these 36 come from? Nawaz Sharif's brother Shehbaz Sharif dropped a hint today. They may be eyeing the independence of Imran Khan. In fact, Shehbaz Sharif claims that 10 independents have already joined them. They're already on board. He's confident of getting the rest of the numbers. Now look at his declaration today. Nawaz Sharif will become Prime Minister for a record 4th time. That's what Shehbaz Sharif said. He also threw a challenge to Imran Khan.
तो मैं यहाँ पर बिला खौफ तरदीद कहना चाहता हूँ कि पार्लियामान में अब ये सारा अमल वहाँ पर मार्ज वजूद में आएगा, और अगर आज़ाद मेंबरान अपने आप को पीटीआई स्पॉन्सर्ड कहें या नॉन पीटीआई स्पॉन्सर्ड कहें, अगर वो हुकूमत बना सकते हैं बड़े शौक से बनाएं। प्रेसिडेंट ने उनको दावत नहीं देनी। अब आइन का मंशा और तकाजा ये है कि हाउस खुद जो जिसकी भी तादाद ज़्यादा है वो अपने कैंडिडेट को वो फील्ड करते हैं। एक प्रोसेस है, स्पीकर के पास बाकायदा वो जमा होते हैं और फिर उस पर वोटिंग होती है। लिहाजा अगर आज़ाद मेंबर जो अपने आप को पीटीआई स्पॉन्सर्ड कहते हैं बड़े शौक से हुकूमत बनाएं, हम अगर वो मेजॉरिटी दिखा देंगे, हम बड़े शौक से हम बैठेंगे ऑपोजिशन बेंचेस पे और अपना आईनी किरदार वो हम अदा करेंगे इंशाअल्लाह।
If you have the numbers, form the government. We'll sit in the opposition. That's the message from the Sharifs. What is Imran Khan's response? Well, he remains muzzled by the military, but he has AI on his side. Imran Khan used artificial intelligence yet again, this time to send a message to the Sharifs.
मैं आप सबको इलेक्शन 2024 जीतने पर मुबारकबाद देता हूं और आपके मैसिव टर्नआउट ने सबको हैरान कर दिया है। लंदन प्लान फेल हो चुका है आपके वोट की वजह से। नवाज शरीफ एक कम ज़र्फ इंसान है जिसने ऑफिशियल नताइज के मुताबिक 30 सीट्स पीछे होते हुए भी विक्ट्री स्पीच कर दी है। कोई पाकिस्तानी उसे नहीं मानेगा और इंटरनेशनल मीडिया भी उस बेवकूफ़ी पर लिख रहा है।
That was Imran Khan's victory speech. That's what they're calling it, at least. Despite his incarceration, Imran Khan is fighting back. He says his party won the election and not Nawaz Sharif. Imran Khan wants his supporters to quote-unquote defend the win. And they're responding to his call. The former Prime Minister is making a play for power. He's formed special committees and they're working on a strategy to form a government at the centre as well as in 2 provinces. That's Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Imran Khan's candidates have won there in large numbers in these 2 provinces. The committees will also name candidates for the posts of Speaker and Deputy Speaker. Imran Khan may be able to form a government in the provinces, but how will he challenge the Sharifs at the centre? That is the big question. He's trying to stitch a coalition of his own. Today, he secured the support of one party. It's called the MWM. How many seats do they have? 1. But in the Punjab province, this party, the MWM, has more than 100 assembly seats. The PTI says they're speaking to more parties and looking for more partners. Another party called the Jamaat-e-Islami is in the mix. They could support Imran Khan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. All these parties are relatively small. Imran Khan has ruled out a coalition with the Bhuttos and the Sharifs. So government formation at the centre is a long shot. Leaders affiliated to his party, the PTI, won 101 seats. The most by any political camp, 101 seats, but all of them contested as independents because their party symbol, the bat, was taken away. The bigger challenge then for Imran Khan would be to hold on to these independents. So after 4 days of chaos, here is what we have: a hung National Assembly and 2 weak contenders for the Prime Minister's chair. The situation is precarious, even for the generals. They were backing the Sharifs. But the election result threw up a surprise. The people of Pakistan rejected the military's choice, so the army's priority now is to find a face saver. The army chief is General Asim Munir. He's already supported the idea of a unity government, but reports say the general is under immense pressure. If the momentum behind Imran Khan continues, the army may be forced to switch sides. Even strike a deal with Imran Khan looks impossible considering all that has happened between the two. But politics, they say, is the art of the possible, and the army has its back against the wall. There are reports of more protests, this time from Balochistan. Islamic parties are hitting the streets and questioning the election result. Local politicians in Balochistan call for a shutdown today. The longer Pakistan remains without a government, the higher would be the risk of unrest. And this is chaos engineered by the military. Not sure if they can fix it, though. Now let's look at the United States. It's election year there. The US will choose its next president in a few months from now. The Republicans are voting on their candidate. It will most likely be Donald Trump, but at least they have a choice. On the Democratic side, there is no such choice. It's pretty much decided. Joe Biden is the sitting president. He can have at least 1 more term in office, which makes him the incumbent and the Democratic nominee. And he has overwhelming support. He's raising a lot of money. The odds are clearly in his favor. What's not is his memory. In the last 2 weeks, Biden has made a lot of gaffes. He's confused living leaders with dead ones. He's forgotten who Israel is fighting in Gaza. And a special counsel report said Biden doesn't remember when his son died. It's a low blow. All of this has raised one question. Is Joe Biden too old to be president again? Let's look at what America says. These are the findings of a recent poll. 86% of those who responded say that Biden is too old to serve another term. That's an overwhelming majority. And it's put the Biden camp in a spot. They have been portraying him as an agile leader. But can they turn public sentiment? Maybe they don't want to. Look at his own vice president, Kamala Harris. In an interview, she was asked about Biden's age, about the looming concerns of voters. Do you know what she said? If Biden is incapacitated, she is ready to lead. Let me quote from her interview. This is what she says. I am ready to serve. There's no question about that. Now, Harris may be ready, but is America ready for her to be president? Let's look at her VP career. Kamala Harris shattered the glass ceiling when she became the American vice president. She was the first black and the first woman VP. But since then, it's been a lackluster career. She's had low approval ratings. She's been politically fragile. Republicans see her as a vulnerability, and more than 50% Americans disapprove of her performance as vice president. So being second in command has not really worked out for her. Will the first be any better? Which brings us to the Democrats. It was supposed to be easy for them. Usually the sitting president is the nominee, but Biden's age has forced their hand. They need a contingency plan. And right now they have two choices. Number one, Biden contests the Democratic primaries. He wins the delegate votes. The votes that are needed, he wins them. He becomes the undisputed candidate. And then he gives up his nomination. He considers the concerns about his age. He backs out and releases his delegates. Then they back Kamala Harris. She becomes the Democratic presidential candidate. That's one scenario. But what happens if Biden's delegates do not back Kamala Harris? Then it will be a scramble. Top Democrats will enter the battle, the likes of California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and of course Kamala Harris. She will be in the same race. They will all compete to replace Joe Biden. They will seek the support of delegates. Whoever wins will become the Democratic nominee. That's scenario number two. Now, both these scenarios are contingent on one thing, that Biden willingly gives up his baton. But what if he does not? What if he continues to be on the ballot? What if he becomes the Democratic nominee and is then incapacitated? For the Democrats, it will be a disaster. If Biden cannot compete, the choice will be in the hands of the Democratic National Committee. It has 450 members. They will choose a new nominee. Of course, all of these are hypothetical situations. Biden and his camp have dismissed all of it. The president says his memory is fine. His team argues that he's healthy and he will run for the next term. The US may want a young face, but they don't really have a choice. Come November, they must choose between two old white men, an 81-year-old and a 77-year-old. Now let's talk about another major country going to the polls. That's Indonesia. Yesterday we told you who the candidates are and how this election is the biggest single-day poll in the world. More than 205 million voters will decide the future of the world's fourth largest country. Today let's focus on the frontrunner. Who is this man? Why is he controversial? And what explains the lead that he has? His name is Prabowo Subianto, the man capturing hearts with his awkward dance moves. His dances have been going viral. There are videos of him kissing his adopted stray cat. A cute animated avatar of his is plastered all over Indonesia. He seems like a charming, wholesome, grandfatherly candidate. And that's the platform he's campaigning on. The messaging is on point. He's become extremely popular with voters, especially the Indonesian youth. And that's the key demographic in tomorrow's election, the youth. But this cuddly image is at odds with Prabowo's past. Look at some of his old pictures. He uploaded them on social media. Prabowo was once a soldier. In fact, he rose to the rank of Lieutenant General, and he once commanded a special forces unit, which is impressive unless you go into the details. Until you go into the details. See who he served under. Indonesia's second president, Suharto, the dictator who ruled for 30 years. Prabowo worked under Suharto. This cuddly grandpa was once a dictator's enforcer. And that's not all. He was also the dictator's son-in-law. Prabowo married into Suharto's family. His father was the dictator's trade minister. So there are plenty of links to the old authoritarian regime. And there are horror stories. of the atrocities that Prabowo helped inflict. When the dictator fell, when Suharto fell, Prabowo was discharged from the military. This was in the year 1998. He was found guilty of kidnapping pro-democracy activists. He's always denied any wrongdoing. Nonetheless, he was removed from the armed forces. Then for a while, he left Indonesia. He was in a self-imposed exile. When he returned, he took up the family business of politics. Over the last 2 decades, Prabowo Subianto projected a strongman image. He even ran for the presidency using this persona. He fought and lost 2 presidential elections, 2014 and 2019. In both cases, he lost to the same man, the current president, Joko Widodo, popularly known as Jokowi. Prabowo lost to Jokowi both times, but after the last election in 2019, Jokowi turned his rival into a partner. He made Prabowo Subianto his defense minister, which is still in line with the strongman general image, defense minister. And this image continued to hold till last year. Then everything changed. An image makeover, a softer version of him, the popular cuddly grandpa persona, that's what they projected. Which begs the question, is it genuine? Did the old strongman really go soft? Indonesia's young voters certainly seem to believe so. Prabowo is currently drawing more than 50% of in opinion polls. More than 50%. He might just become president tomorrow. So the youth seem to be buying into his grandpa transformation. Or maybe they just don't care. You see, Indonesia has changed. The dictatorship is in the past. Now the country is a vibrant, growing economy. The youth want jobs. They want better wages. So it's possible that Prabowo's history is of no concern to them. All is forgiven and forgotten as long as he can keep delivering growth. And it's here that Prabowo has a leg up on the other candidates. Indonesia has grown by a cumulative 43% in the last 10 years. 43% growth. This growth is credited to the outgoing President Jokowi, who still remains extremely popular, but he has to step down because his 2-term limit is over. But Prabowo Subianto is seen as his chosen successor, even though he's not a member of Jokowi's party, but his running mate is Jokowi's son, Gibran Raka Buming Raka, Prabowo's vice presidential pick. So Jokowi may be leaving the presidency, but his son is running for the post of VP. He will continue to have eyes and ears in the office. And that gives people hope that Jokowi's policies will continue. Young Indonesians are making their choice clear. They're not bothered about dynastic politics or about Prabowo's murky past. What they care for is the promise of growth. And that alone could propel the old general to power. Now let's turn to Europe, specifically to the European NATO members. 29 of NATO's 31 members are in Europe, and all of them are worried because of Donald Trump. The former US president made a speech on Saturday. He spoke about not defending NATO members who did not contribute to the alliance. And that has led to a range of reactions in Europe. Some countries are treating it as a wake-up call, almost like constructive feedback. Others are angry. They're making jibes at Trump. But all of them seem to agree on one thing, that Europe cannot rely on the US alone. They need to come together. They need to prepare for war. Here's our report.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
That was the speech that has shaken Europe. European NATO members, anyway. Trump said you got to pay your bills, and it seems now Europe has finally woken up.
So I think it still is the plea for everybody to do more. And I think what the presidential candidate in America says is also something to maybe wake up some of the allies who haven't done that much. So hopefully we all do more, and collectively we are stronger together.
These words from former US President Donald Trump should act as a cold shower to all those who constantly disregard this increasingly real threat Europe is facing. We have to stand on our own feet, of course, still counting on full cooperation with the United States. But Europe must do more to ensure its security.
They're talking about waking up, doing more, a cold shower. Basically, exactly what Trump seems to have wanted. But the Europeans don't seem too happy about it. They seem hurt by Trump's statement.
No matter what will happen in the US in this year, I think the conclusion has to be written already now that Europe needs to be stronger and we need to be able to do more on our own.
Article 5 of the Washington Treaty was used for the first time after a terrorist attack on the United States after September 11th. And at that time, Poland sent army brigades to Afghanistan for decades. And we didn't send the bills for that to Washington. Alliances also strengthened the United States.
The Polish minister does have a point. He says that the only time NATO acted together was after 9/11. After the US was attacked. They probably didn't have to. American firepower alone would have been enough. But they did anyway. They did it to prove a point. The main purpose of NATO is deterrence, the all for one and one for all mantra. From the weakest member to the strongest. Everyone will work together. Even those who don't have much to offer militarily. That was the whole reason behind NATO. Trump's statements have changed that. Europe is awake now. They might begin contributing their fair share, but they may not trust the US again, especially under Trump. European countries have begun preparing to survive without American assistance. Poland, France, and Germany have vowed to make Europe stronger. Poland's Prime Minister wants more money invested in defense projects. The three countries also plan to deepen their mutual defense ties by reviving a dormant regional grouping called the Weimar Triangle. Others may follow suit, seek similar intra-European alliances. Europe could start looking inwards instead of across the Atlantic. So Trump has both gained and lost something. He gained the promise of funds, but lost trust, little that he had in the first place anyway. That trade-off may be worth it to him, but as for the rest of the NATO members, the alarm bells are ringing loud and clear.
AI sovereignty. It's the new catchphrase in the world of tech. But what does it mean? It means your artificial intelligence must be yours alone. The data, the process, the algorithms, all of it must be owned and regulated at home. You can't just use foreign ones. Most tech titans are talking about this. The latest one is the CEO of NVIDIA. This is what he said.
Own your own national intelligence. You cannot allow that to be done by other people. And that is a real realization. Now that we've democratized the computation of AI, the infrastructure of AI, the rest of it is really up to you to take initiative, activate your industry, build the infrastructure as fast as you can so that the researchers, the companies, your governments can take advantage of this infrastructure to go and create your own AI.
So that's the message. Create your own artificial intelligence. But how and why? Most experts agree that AI will get bigger in the coming years. It will make your lives easier. It will also make the government's job easier. But for that, you need local AI. Take India, for example. People speak dozens of languages in India. Their requirements, their aspirations are different. Will a foreign AI be able to capture all of it? Chances are no. Same with data. AI systems require a lot of data about the people. Why should foreign firms get access to that? We let that happen with social media. Western tech firms pioneered social media. India never tried to challenge them. And look at where it got us. Some of them refuse to comply with Indian laws. Most of them store their data outside India. And they refuse to take responsibility for their actions. But now it's too late. Social media sovereignty is an impossible dream now. Maybe AI sovereignty is not. It's still early days, which brings us to the most important question. How do you make sovereign AI? The first step is digital sovereignty, storing user data inside India, not outside. Our data should be stored inside the country. The government is thinking in that direction. Last year, the IT Ministry released a draft, the Data Governance Framework, that's what it was called. It talked about an Indian data set platform. Think of it as a compilation of random non-personal data. The plan is to make this data available to Indian startups and researchers. What for? So that homegrown AI platforms can be made. In other words, AI sovereignty can be achieved. In fact, let me quote from what the IT minister said. We can take two options. One is to say, as long as there is an AI ecosystem in India, whether that is driven by Google, Meta, Indian startups and Indian companies, we should be happy about it. But we certainly don't think that is enough. We are determined that we must have our own sovereign AI. That's what the minister said, and it won't be easy though. Western AI firms have a head start. It will take a lot of time and money to catch up. Plus, the world is betting against it. Let me tell you what happened last year. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman was in India, and he was asked whether Indian AI models could rival ChatGPT. Do you know what he said? He said it was impossible. India will have to work hard to change that, to prove the likes of Sam Altman wrong. Our next story comes from the southeastern African nation of Malawi. It's a country of about 21 million people and one of the least developed nations in the world. It ranked at 183 in terms of per capita GDP. This is after adjusting for local prices. More than 80% of the people here are employed in agriculture, so the country clearly needs economic growth and revenue streams beyond traditional agriculture. So Malawi is now betting on tourism. It is targeting visitors from 79 countries. It has removed visa requirements for these countries, opening up its pristine wilderness to the world. Here's our report.
Malawi is a mostly rural country. Over 80% of the people are employed in agriculture. The biggest industries in the country are the tobacco and tea trade. This has been the case since colonization. Malawi was a British colony up to 1964, which explains the tea and tobacco. While other former colonies have diversified their industries, Malawi seems to have held on to traditional agriculture-based occupations. And that has set them back lately, because climate change has been taking a toll on harvests.
10 years ago, there was enough rain and we had good harvests. But due to the erratic rainfall, we are now facing many challenges.
But all that is set to change. Malawi has taken a big gamble. It is planning to move away from agriculture and instead focus on tourism. Last week, it decided to scrap visas for 79 countries. The country's president, Lazarus Chakwera, explained the decision. He said that while tourism was already Malawi's third largest source of income, it was underperforming. He blamed this on the country's lack of accessibility. That is why his government has announced the visa waiver. But will this be enough? First, there's a catch with the visa waiver. The waiver only applies to countries that don't impose visa requirements on the people of Malawi. The whole exception list isn't out yet, but it includes the US, the UK, France, China, Russia, and other nations in southern Africa. Malawi may find it hard getting the West to reciprocate and remove visa requirements for its citizens. So the waiver is a hopeful bet at best. But if Malawi's plan does work, if tourism does increase, it comes with its own set of challenges. The country is known for its titular lake, Lake Malawi. It is listed as a UN World Heritage Site. The lake has clear waters, sandy beaches, and abundant marine life. It also attracts animals like elephants. This is a delicate ecosystem. Tourism is good, but over-tourism can damage the area. It needs to be managed well. A balanced approach will be required, or Malawi's pristine ecosystem, already under threat from climate change, could face another existential crisis.
What is one of the worst career moves a woman can make? Some would say motherhood. And I'll tell you why. Parenting is a full-time job, especially if your child is young. It can be highly rewarding, yes, but it also demands a heavy price, especially from women. Women lose out on 60% of their income in the first 10 years after childbirth. 60% in the first 10 years. Yes, there are exceptions, but this is the trend. And here's how it plays out. Both men and women finish school. They start working, they're paid pretty much equally, but as the workers hit their 20s and mid-30s, a gender pay gap appears. That's when many women have children. If they stay in the workforce, they're less likely to be perceived as competent at work. If they leave, they miss out on promotions and other opportunities. And then these women are less likely to be rehired for jobs. But when mothers do rejoin the workforce, they pay a long-term price. Many are stuck in roles below their capability. They are less likely to be paid as much as their male colleagues, and the gap between men and women grows significantly over the next 2 decades. This has been dubbed as the Motherhood Penalty. A new study measured it across 134 countries, and here's what it found. After the birth of the first child, 24% women leave the workforce in the first year. 5 years later, 17% don't join it. 10 years later, 15% are still absent. And this affects the global workforce. It has a yawning gender pay gap between the ages of 25 and 54. 95% of men are in the labor force, but the figure for women is just 52%. And nothing hurts this like a motherhood penalty. In America, 80% of the gender gap is because women drop out after childbirth. In Latin America, 38% of working women leave the workforce after childbirth. A decade later, 37% are still out. What about India? 73% of Indian women leave their jobs after childbirth. So the numbers vary, but the trend is ubiquitous and the situation is dire. Now, governments across the world are trying to combat it. They're trying to nudge more women into the workforce. The Netherlands, Germany, Austria, and Britain, they're all planning to reform childcare subsidies. Canada already has them. Japan has tax exemption to cover childcare. India has stressed on national standards for childcare. They're doing their bit, but the gains are limited. Government policies alone cannot enforce workplace equality. We need a change in mentality, both in the workplace and in our homes, and this applies to both men and women. Over time, men have started contributing more at home. Childbearing is increasingly seen as a shared job. But even so, men spend just a third of the time women do on unpaid work. So women continue to do more unpaid labor, all while they're expected to balance work and give both the jobs their all. As the saying goes, we expect women to work like they don't have children and raise children as if they don't work. Until this changes, women will continue to pay the motherhood penalty. And for our last story, let's talk about your pets, your beloved furry friends. What do you feed them? Some of you may say, it's whatever you eat. But for many, it's curated, nutritionally enriched pet food, only the best to suit the needs of their pets. And this number is growing. The global pet food industry is worth $150 billion now, and it's only growing bigger. There are thousands of choices, organic ones, unprocessed ones, grain-free options for pets. So much so that pets may be eating better than us. But how is pet food developed? Is it just about nutrition, or is there more to it? Our next report tells you.
Bright-coloured packaging, aisles full of options, curated social media posts, and friendly dogs jumping about in ads. Pet kibble may look boring, but the industry is only growing. It's worth $150 billion, and the reason behind it is the need for the best nutrition for our pets. For us humans, pets are more than just animals. We want the best things for our furry friends, and this includes curated food suited to their needs and demands. And this has fueled the rise of an entire industry. There are many players, and there are many options. Organic ones, green ones. If you're a pet owner, you could even be overwhelmed, especially by the sheer number of options. The first dry pet food was invented in 1860. In the early 20th century, it became a commercial product. Canned wet pet food was introduced in 1922. Cat food emerged in the 1930s. During World War II, dry pet food production increased. Canned food was scarce, and dry food was easier to store. Today, the pet food industry is a huge one. There are hundreds of brands and over 3,000 products. The market is worth billions. But who are the biggest players? Eames, Caesar, Whiskas, Sheba, Pedigree, Eukanuba. They make up most of the market share. How do they build their products? A lot of science goes into it. There are research institutes working on this. They have their own set of cats and dogs. They live on the facilities. And it's not just one breed. There are different varieties of them. They are usually playing all day. But it's not all play and no work. Every day, these animals are fed 2 meals. Each meal is curated to each individual animal. The bowls have electronic balances. It shows how fast the animals eat or if they take a pause. Plus, they wear monitors. These are to track their vitals. All of them are also DNA sequenced. This is to track the effect the food has. Of course, the attention to detail is immaculate, but it extends beyond mere nutrition. There are nutritional supplements to make their fur shinier, to make their nails more sturdy, to make their farts less odorous. It is veterinary science at the end of the day. But there are the haters too. They say food like this is like junk food for animals, that animals should go back to the raw diet of meat and bones. Feeding animals was easy in the past. You gave them whatever you ate, scraps from the table, food you couldn't finish. It was meant for your pets. But the pet food industry has changed since then. As ownership rates increase, pet parents want the best for their fur babies, and consumerism is exploiting that. The choices are unlimited, so much so that pets may be eating better than some humans.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In the US, a jet crashed on a Florida highway, killing 2 people. In China, heavy snowfall leaves 2,000 tourists stranded in the country's northwest. And a baby rhino born in a French zoo has raised hopes for this endangered species. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1945, Nazi-occupied Budapest fell to the Russians during the Second World War. This was after a 50-day siege. At least 50,000 Germans were killed in this. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hitler chose this day to announce the reoccupation of the Rhine zone by German troops. And as he spoke, the rumble of wheels of advancing troops.
10多处雪崩，道路一度封闭。昨天18时，道路抢通，所有封闭路段已经恢复了单向通行。当地交警部门带道护送喀纳兹景区内的2000多名游客，通过500多辆车，安全有序地离开了景区。根据阿勒泰气象部门的预报，明天开始阿勒泰将会有新一轮的强降雪天气，喀纳兹景区道路将会依情况进行交通。
C'est la première? Ah oui, je voyais pas encore.
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.